Chapter 2 Assembling the Ensemble. Summary. Now, Izuku Midoriya must collect his heist crew. Chapter 2 Assembling the Ensemble. There were plans taking up every corner of Izuku's room. As it turned out, the briefcase worth of documents that Aizawa had given him to hand over to Nedzu was actually just an extremely lengthy description of all the tasks he had to achieve, every possible rule applying to him, and a few other essay-long descriptions of things he'd need to know. Izuku hadn't actually gotten out a notebook for all the plans he had been coming up with so far, but instead he began writing them down online under an encrypted file which began with 27 pages worth of awfully written fanfiction as to throw off anyone who somehow got past the encryption. If anyone actually did read the beginning chapter of his poorly written All Might fanfiction, however, they would be thrown off the tracks because of the actual plot of the story was about a heist, and his notes were written without any mentions of the actual items he was supposed to steal. So he really needed to find some way to encrypt the notes better, so that every time he opened the file, he wouldn't be accosted by the most horrendous work Izuku had ever the misfortune of reading. Which led him to his next list of things to do. This one was written out in small writing on a large whiteboard Izuku had managed to snag from an unused storage room within the facility. Even though nobody would notice it, he was still feeling guilty enough to leave a small note saying just how awful he felt for not asking permission first. Nonetheless, he needed to keep on going for the sake of UA. What did he need to accomplish in order to how soon he needed it to be done? Number 1 was to collect accomplices for his crime. Izuku cringed. The weight he was absently plumping flopped down to the floor with a heavy thud. Accomplices to a crime sounded far too evil for what he was actually doing. It was just an end-of-the-year exam after all. An end-of-the-year exam that could potentially strip away his chances to be a legal hero someday. But still an exam! People were counting on him as well, said the small voice at the back of Izuku's mind. The determined glint came back to his gaze as he stared down at a blank sheet of paper. So, who did he know from the other courses who could work? Principal Nedzu had specified that he could have one person per class, per course. So, for example, he could have one person from management, one from support, and another from general education, and then finally the hero course. Not counting himself, however, which he was honestly thankful for. It was the per class order that made things so much harder. Biting his lip, Izuku looked back down at his sheet of paper and wrote a large title of Class 1B. He didn't have much experience with the only other hero course in UA, unless they were counting the sports festival and camp, so who could he potentially recruit from the course who would actually be willing to rob dozens of heroes and potentially risk their future career? Probably not many of them. If he were allowed to ask people from his own class, then things would be probably so much easier. Not to say 1B had bad quirks, but really, if he thought about it in all fairness, then wasn't everyone in his class kind of overpowered? Todoroki had both the powers of fire and ice, which was honestly just ridiculous. And Uraraka could negate gravity on practically anything. If he had been able to recruit her to his team, that it would have been so much easier grabbing that painting. Uraraka could just fly down from the ceiling and grab it without anyone none the wiser. Although he had no doubt that was underthinking just how complicated robbing one of the most well-protected events in Japan could be. Scrunching up his brow a little, Izuku jotted down on the paper a short note of "must be versatile" with the word underlined twice. So not only would he need to find someone from 1B who had a quirk that was useful in many scenarios, but he also needed to be certain, first, that the student in question would be trustworthy and not prone to blab instantly about his plans. Leaning back in his chair, Izuku let out a large sigh and breathed out slowly, designating to find someone from 1B last. So first, he was going to have to look for someone from support. Straightening up in his chair, with a wide-eyed look on his face, Izuku looked down back to his paper. He already had the perfect candidate from the support course. One who was almost certainly crazy enough to go along with his ideas, and probably willing enough to help with his current problem of just how they would steal the HPSC files in the first place. Grinning softly to himself, Izuku made plans to head off towards the support course in search of one Hatsume Mei. Standing in front of the 1H classroom shouldn't have been as daunting as it felt, but seeing as the last time he stood before the iron-clad doors, they had actually exploded on Izuku, his fears weren't probably too unfounded. His hands were quivering slightly as he went to grasp the door handle. Izuku felt so nervous it was like he was going to jump out of his skin at any moment. Taking a deep breath in and out, he got over it, twisting the door handle quickly and stumbling inside. It would be empty after all, it was the weekend. When he'd stumbled across another 1H student, they had said, however, that Hatsume spent all of her time in the workshop and had practically made it her home, rather than her very own dorm room. But the classroom was empty, and Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. I don't know if I'm upset she isn't actually here, or if I'm relieved. A shadow cast over his frame, and two yellow eyes blinked into existence behind his shoulder, causing a sharp chill to run down his spine. 10 million? Izuku leapt back, yelping in terror. The faintest surge of one for all flickering off of his skin as he spun around to face Mai Hatsume herself. Was she wearing the same clothes she'd worn at the last time he spoken to her? The girl in question gasped in delight and came uncomfortably close to his face, with her signature maniacal smile smothering her facial features. 10 million! I thought I recognized you. Come in, come in! The door slammed shut behind her, and Izuku was so overwhelmed it hurt. Spinning around with a grin, Hatsume began to check around piles of what were assuredly dangerous gadgets with her signature curiosity while rapidly speaking. So, you're here for a costume upgrade? Wonderful! Some of these babies I have here are perfect for strong quirks, like this hammer. And before Izuku could even say a single word, there was a hammer flung into his hands, which was heavy. The inventor still flung around items. Before Izuku could gently set down the device, there was another long piece of armor-like equipment, none too dissimilar from Eraserhead's scarf in his grasp. Now this baby is made from a nanotechnical fiber. It is built to cover your weak spot in a pinch if a villain gets too close, and this... He had to stop this soon, waving his hands about in frantic denial. Izuku finally gained the will to speak. I'm not here for any support gear. Hatsume froze. The gadgets in her hands toppled to the floor as Izuku winced desperately hoping that the slight bump wouldn't kill them all. Was one beeping? You aren't. Then what are you here for, 10 million? Hatsum turned around, and Izuku attempted to take his mind off the one item on the floor that was most certainly emitting high-pitched beeping, which now was accompanied by a flashing red light. The inventor seemed a mix of almost confused and cautious. Her former smile shrank slightly, the firm pursed lips in a strained sort of grimace. Oh goodness, he hadn't thought about how to bring it up. That should have been on the forefront of his mind. How embarrassing. I wanted to give you a business proposition? Sending a weak smile in Hatsume's way. All Izuku could do was hope it worked, despite his face most likely being a flash mess from his mistake. Hatsume's face relaxed, and suddenly the girl was cheerful again, and dragging over two wheeled office chairs. You should have said so. I'm all ears for any opportunity to show off my sweet babies. She grabbed him by the shoulder and practically pushed Izuku into the chair she brought over for him, while swinging around the chair meant for herself, and sitting on it backwards with her head resting on where the back would normally lean against. Grin still slightly strained, but now far more natural than it had been before. Spill, Green Bean, what's this deal you have for me? There was no going back now. If Izuku couldn't sell this, then there was a chance. No, there was a certainty of UA never being the same again. And while UA could do a lot of changes, these ones would almost definitely not be the way he wanted. Have you heard of the upcoming gala? And Hatsume's eyes widened in glee, the strained look disappearing from her expression almost instantly. Of course I have! A sour glint came to her eyes as the girl pouted with marksman-like eyes suddenly. And I'm not allowed to show off any of my babies to all the cool inventors around. Isn't that just a waste? Izuku nodded frantically as a fanatic look came to the girl's eyes. Her hands twitched maniacally alongside her. Yeah, that too. Izuku straightened up and attempted to portray a level of calmness he wasn't exactly feeling. So, how would you feel about showing off how effective they can be? Also, about getting a free pass on all the year's exam and favor from Principal Nedzu? Hatsume stared at him for a moment in silence, an unreadable expression on her features. Had he misjudged the situation? What had he messed up here? But before Izuku could even begin a new mumbling spree, the inventor before him grasped his hands, causing him to blush furiously at the aggressive closeness and the unusually serious look in her eyes. He felt most probably hadn't seen before. 10 million! I am going to need you to elaborate, but I'm in if this is in any way what you meaning to tell me. Maybe it was the embarrassment of having a person so close to his face and in his personal space, or maybe it was just the high volume of the stress of the situation, but Izuku burst, unable to contain his storm anymore, as the fact spewed out of him. So Nedzu-sensei is in danger of being forced out of school, but he doesn't want to go, and the Hero Commission said only if a robbery happened during the gala, while they have so many trained pro heroes around, they will let Nedzu keep being the principal, but the student he chose was me, and he said me and whoever else I get to help me can get a favor from him as well as a pass for all the year's exam if we can pull off a heist of the gala valuables and I was wondering if you would be okay with joining the gang and helping me. I'm absolutely in! Izuku paused, a dumbfounded expression coming to his face as he processed her words. She wanted to help him? Him? As he rubbed school to Hatsume's frantic nodding brought him back as the girl grabbed his hand, causing him to let out a soft eek of shock as she came out too close for comfort. Shrouding her face was the most determined look he'd ever seen from the other, which practically dwindled from the one she had worn in the sports festival as she prepared to lose intentionally to Ida. But Izuku understood the look in her eyes, understood the fierce sensation of uneasy excitement and the thirst to prove themselves. Hatsume stood up so quickly that her chair flung to side and bounced on the linoleum floors. A savage glint to her face as she began to pace through the lab space. So, I assume you have some good plans in that noggin of yours? You seem to be a great idea guy, so how about you tell me the things you want me to do to help you out, and I'll make them all up. Oh wait, what are we stealing from the gala? Isn't it just robbing the eater? Right? I can probably get you into the security system too. This is going to be so much fun. Gulping, Izuku sat back in his chair as the inventor went on about potential ideas. Security cameras, huh? They gave him an idea he hadn't been considering before. And as the two continued to speak around for a good hour longer before Izuku finally gathered his book bag to leave with a final goodbye, compromise of the promise they meet up the next day at approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon to finalize things with those who would hopefully become their new members. Did he have the right to be so unashamed of comedy and heroic activities before the commission? Probably not, but nothing with a smile as he got back to his room. Izuku felt as if he finally had been better planned for how things were going to go, as well as the target for who exactly he would be able to recruit from the general education course. For once, the grin covering his face was positively vindictive, as Izuku Midoriya set off to find one Hitoshi Shinso. Sorry? Is there Shinso here, by any chance? I've been looking to maybe ask him some question, maybe. The Janet student stared Izuku down for what felt like too long of a moment, before finally shrugging and flipping a tuft of brunette hair to fold over the left side of his face. I mean, sure dude. I'll grab him out of the room to tell him that someone from the hero course is here. Closing the door by just a tad, the student then turned around and began to walk up to where Izuku knew the dorm staircase was. May take a moment, but he'll be here in a tad. And as the door closed just a slight bit more, Izuku could hear the smutterings of muttered voices talking about a bone-breaking kid who was looking for revenge from the sports festival. Nope! Izuku thought, his ears turning red as he span away from the door and began to fidget with his hands to try and pay no attention to what the 1C students were theorizing he was wanting from Shinso. He only had to wait about 4 minutes in uncomfortable silence, however, before finally the door opened and out came a tense-looking Shinso in a denim jacket that was far too small for him. Izuku breathed out a sigh of relief as the other shut the door and automatically began to walk to the side of the building as he followed the other along, much like a lost puppy. Since the sport festival, he could see that the Shinso had bulked up a bit, but otherwise it was looking about the same as before. Soon enough, the two of them had reached the shore beach outside of the non-windowed area, which Izuku noted his class did not have. Neither did have any bushes concealing the area like a nice hollowed-out garden. So why did only the general course have them? Was it a quirk thing or a result of maintenance by the students themselves, or was it just there by the teachers for some reason? So, why did you ask for me? I don't suppose it was to go and study plant life like you are right now. Izuku came out of his thoughts with a large blush that enveloped his face. Shinzo was still watching him, still quite unamused, but the other was still very tense. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, Shinzo-kun. I just sort of got lost in thought, and I'm so sorry for carrying you so close to the dinner time. Izuku cut himself off before he rambled even more, blushing still permitting his features. Shinzo sighed and looked off to the side with a slight sneer puttering the side of his mouth. The other boy just looked so exhausted though, so Izuku couldn't help but feel bad about disturbing the boy. Are you going to get this over with or... Oh! Izuku flushed again and pulled out his notebook quickly from his book bag, fumbling around before he could finally get a hold of the thing. Quickly, he flicked the pages to the first, which has only a few words in large lettering. Is there anyone in your class with a quirk that could hear us right now? Shinzo somehow tensed up even more at these words and gave Izuku a wary glance, filled with annoyance. And was that fear? Cautiously, Shinzo nodded his head, raising his arms to cover his chest in a protective manner. Aye, nobody in Janet has any quirks like that. Nobody is able to hear us, apart from Principal Nedzu, of course. He said the last words almost as if they were a threat, but the admission only made Izuku breathe out a sigh of relief. Nedzu would almost surely know who his gathered partners would be, so it didn't matter too much if the red was the only one with an inkling of his plans. Geez, thank you so much, Shinzo-kun. I am sorry about all of the secrets, but I think you'd understand once I get to the chase. Midoriya, the point. And that made his jaw wire shut so fast that the purple-haired boy looked almost alarmed at the probably unintentional usage of his quirk. Izuku only rubbed his jaw and winced, knowing he had probably been about to go vastly off topic if the other had simply let him run his course. Thanks for that, Shinzo-kun. Sorry about the rambling. I'll get to the objective now. And while the other still looked extremely shocked at Izuku's brushing off of the use of his quirk on him, Izuku continued. Placing his notebook on the bench surface, he took a deep breath in and out. He couldn't quit right now, not when he's already recruited one person and US freedom was on the line. Shinzo-kun, do you still want to be a hero? And the other froze. His eyes widened and his shoulders fell down as his hands had previously been fidgeting, released, fell to his sides slowly. Izuku couldn't begin to imagine the sorts of thoughts that must have been running through the other kid's mind. Eventually, through the silence, Shinzo looked back up at him, eyes steadfast and full of stanch determination and defiance. I will become a hero. You got a problem with that? And maybe it was the delivery of the sentence, or just how obviously committed he was to his goal, but Izuku found his eyes glowing white with admiration. The other participant of the conversation took a confused step back as Izuku began to break into a large grin. You're so cool, Shinzo-kun. It's so great to know you are still wanting to pursue such a hard and troubling road, but I have no doubt that you could do it on your own. And then Izuku's grin fell slightly as he got back into business mode. However, I could speed up the process by quite some time. Shinso seemingly got a whiplash from the sudden change in personality, as Izuku's stutter seemingly magically left him. The other went back from an uneasy relaxation to distrusting once more. But this goal was achieved. Shinso was now interested, and that could be what allowed him to convert another willing member to his team who would make things go so much quicker. It was now time to pitch his goal and see whether or not the other would bite. You, For once, Shinso almost seemed flabbergasted, his previous facade cracking at the edges as Izuku steadily ran hole into its surface. You actually think I could become a hero on my own? Me? And Izuku suddenly remembered what was likely to be a crucial part of his plans. Hitoshi Shinso had probably never had too much encouragement before in his life, as even during this festival he'd expressed how others hadn't treated him right because of having such a villainous quirk. Memories flashed back to hiding in bathroom stalls and evading students by taking larger routes throughout unused rooms and hallways. Izuku understood at least a part of what his pain was, so now it was just up to him to make the other believe in himself. The added bonus was of course that he would have one other team member to help out, of course. But while Izuku came to his newfound understanding, Shinso was meanwhile having what felt like a midlife crisis at the young age of 15. Nobody had really believed in him so surely before. Yeah, there were people who also had villainous quirks out there, but not so many of them had mind-controlling quirks like his. He'd always had to survive off of giving fate the middle finger and then plunging through whatever trials were thrown his way. He made his way through the goddamn third round of the sports festival as a judge and nobody, beating out tons of other hero hopefuls, and not one peep had been said to suggest that he get a place in the hero course in the future. Not one peep. And suddenly, here was the very hero student who'd beaten him out for the sports festival second round, who was suddenly all hopeful and seemingly actually believed in him to be a potential hero. Not to mention the fact that he'd thought that kid was pulling him behind the dorms to maybe beat him up or something. He'd even reacted to his quirk positively, which was perhaps the first time Shinso had ever seen something like that happen. So, all in all, Izuku Midoriya was seeming like an utter mystery to him. He was probably just some regular dandy who thought that he was probably doing the right thing by sticking up for the villain kid. Probably just a hero hopeful who would just abandon him in the end. Then why was his heart beating so fast? Midoriya stared at him a moment longer after his words, probably contemplating what he'd said. Before gently, Midoriya smiled at him. Of course you could, Shinso-kun. It was like as if his head would explode. Someone believe in him? For real? But no, it had to be a trick. If not even his fucking mother could believe he could become a hero, then why would... But that isn't to say I couldn't offer you a shortcut, however. And his mind stepped back into the reality to focus on the boy before him. Izuku Midoriya, the living enigma who could somehow break out of his quirk alone and for some ungodly reason believe in him when nobody else actually did, somehow had a way for him to get into the hero course. Shinso doubted it very much. I am listening. And Midoriya beamed. He beamed so brightly that Shinso wondered for a moment if he had just given the boy all of his pocket money and then some. Thank you very much. So the general gist of the situation is that Nedzu is going to get forcefully kicked out of UA For a bigoted, quirkist commission employee who cares more about the fleshiness side of things than saving people thing and stop this, I was given the task to recruit a person from each course where possible to conduct a heist on the upcoming gala with Nedzu's full approval, of course, which may actually be impossible. If we do succeed, then Nedzu will was all a favor and you could request to get into the hero course. And Midoriya, that actual doofus, because how could someone be so unabashed from saying they were planning to conduct maybe the biggest heist Japan has ever seen, continued to beam at him. Shinzo blinked and let out a large sigh, rubbing his tired eyes with the back of his left fist before he looked back at the boy once more with utter exasperation. I am going to need you to run this by me one more time, please. And tell me you didn't just admit to a random stranger you've only met once before that you are planning on robbing a school full of heroes during the biggest event of the year, because I did not hear that correctly. Somehow, if it were possible, Midoriya's beaming grin grew wider. All Hitoshi Shinzo could think about was the fact that he was unavoidably, inescapably hooked.